Welcome back, everyone. This is the weekly performance report. So, noticeable activities over the last week is quite a bit of activity, actually, which is I bought more Tidewater, Valaris, Siboney Stillwater, A-Mark Precious Metals, and Elf Beauty. And I sold Kronos, Trueleaf, and Green Thumb. I chalk up my purchase of Tidewater, Valaris, and A-Mark as bag holder maneuvers. The offshore names are now a 2026 story, seemingly. In 2023, it was a 2024 story. Then in 2024, it was a second half 2024 story. And now that we're in the second half of 2024, they decided just to skip a year and make it a 2026 story. However, the backlog, day rates, utilization rates, revenue efficiency is still holding steady. This is what makes me stay in those names. And I commented on this. I believe I had Valaris in mind when I said it, but it was another company. I believe it was one of the specialty alloy companies, either USAP or ATI, when they started talking about a second half of the year story. Actually, I believe it was an article I did. And then I said, I just bemoaned for a moment about how it's always the second half or the first half. It's always 6 months away. It's this tentative, ostensible, near in the future type thing to give them plausible deniability and postpone coming to terms with what's ever going on. But also the problem is sometimes things just get pushed out a couple of quarters, and that's how it goes. So this is how it's going. Nonetheless, I'm in the names. I bought more. We'll see what happens in life. A-Mark reported Q1 results, which were shit. I bought more at the same price that I initiated a position originally, although I'm down on the position in aggregate due to buying a few shares at higher prices. And Siboney Stillwater is something that I'm slowly adding to over time. Don't really have anything much to say on that. A new name I purchased was Elf Beauty. I'll just sum it up with a tweet I've recently made. Someone asked me why I bought it, and this was my answer. For starters, I often pursue beaten down sectors, which the cosmetic industry seems to be in. Elf is back to its May 2022 forward PE of roughly 30 times. Since May 2022, earnings per share has grown roughly 5 times. The stock went up 10 times when it topped out at $200-ish. And with the recent, over the last few months, 50% pullback, the stock is now reflective of its historical earnings per share growth, meaning that in the last 2.5 years, we'll call it, earnings per share went up 5 times, yet the stock went up 10 times. So you could say it got ahead of itself, pricing in perfection, however you want to look at it. So if the earnings per share double, then you might say reasonably that the stock would double. I remember Warren Buffett talking about this, I have no idea when or where, at the Berkshire meeting, and he said something like, lo and behold, Coca-Cola shares went up 30 times over whatever the time period was, and it just so happened that the stock went up 30 times over that time period. So that's a good way to think about things. So with that said, you could say that historically, Elf is fairly valued for what it's done over the last 2.5 years. And then the question becomes, is it deserving of that 30 times forward PE multiple now? And I don't know. Why not 25 times? Why not 35 times? That's the problem with these things. And you could say math. Math is the reason why. And then you pull out your spreadsheets and your Nielsen data and this and that, and then you come up with your number 28 times, 16 times. Somebody was buying it at 70 times. Of course, those might just, maybe the top wasn't people who understand businesses buying, but perhaps just momentum traders buying, and day traders buying, and swing traders buying, and so on and so forth. And now, I suspect I explained some of it, but not all of it, of course. And then a lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing at all. They can't even post hoc rationalize what they're doing, which I've argued for, you should at least be able to post hoc rationalize why you're doing something. Even if it's specious or ostensible and just bullshit reasoning, you should be able to string a coherent-ish narrative along to justify why you're doing what you're doing. Nonetheless, in all fairness, I also posted this, which is fascinating. So I posted, this is an actual slide out of the ELF investor presentation, which, by the way, I found to be one of the worthless investor presentations. It reminded me very much of the Victoria's Secret investor presentation. There's something about that kind of industry or something that provides these garbage investor presentations with tons of filler. They're like a Tidewater or Valeris. It's like 30 slides, 40 slides. A lot of the companies I'm invested in are that way, and it's concentrated information with minimal filler. And then the Victoria's Secret and the ELF is like these 90 slides, and trust me, you're not getting anything more out of 90 slides than you are the typical 30 or 40 slides. Nonetheless, this is an actual slide out of the ELF investor presentation. Why do these companies make it so hard to invest in them? Can you imagine if they said, we have a board that is 78% vaginas? Gotcha. Boardrooms need more vaginas and less dicks. Glad we figured that out. Of course, they're trying to be cute and funny, but in a, you know how people say serious things in a joking way? Sort of, kind of similar dynamic. I found this article, link in the article. I found this article to be helpful in getting up to speed on ELF. On to the names I sold. I allow myself to be 33% allocated to any one sector. My cannabis exposure was over that. With Schedule 3 failing to pass in Florida, I exited TrueLeaf. It was only ever a trade. And I was not around my screens November 6th, so I was unable to buy the morning dip in Green Thumb, which was incredible. I think it closed up, so it opened, gapped down massively, and then it closed up on the day like 25%. I mean, it was still down on the day, but it was up from that low 25%. I completely missed out on that. As such, I was up a few percent when I sold the name, Green Thumb. And then Kronos I sold because I wanted the capital to deploy elsewhere. Kronos is a net play. I believe it's still a net. So, you know, that's fine and dandy, but I wanted the money to buy ELF, so I did. I ended the week down 0.31%, making this my 6th straight weekly drawdown. Just this week alone, I underperformed my benchmark by 5%. There's nothing, there are, that's an exaggerative statement I was going to make. It can be frustrating when November 6th, S&P up 2.5%, my portfolio down 2.5%. That's 5% spread in difference of performance. And since that's my benchmark, it kind of matters. What am I at now? I would say that I'm probably 13% year to date on my portfolio, and then the S&P's up like 26% year to date. So what, my portfolio is going to have to jump 50% over the next month and a half, let's call it, while the S&P stays flat or declines. I'm just saying, if I was placing a bet, which I am because I'm betting on these names, but more specifically a time bet, the probability of me outperforming the S&P this year is, I'm just going to go with practically zero. I don't see how that would happen. I really don't. The only way would be that I could see really much going on is, now, thankfully, let me stop there. Thankfully, I was in 8%, 9% cash over the last few weeks. That prevented further larger drawdowns that I would have experienced alternatively. In this last week, I pretty much deployed all of that, in part because I did, and in part because if I have any chance of catching up with S&P, not going from, say, up 13% to down, or to down up 10%, but if I have any chance of catching up, then I need to be all in and Hail Mary it, so to speak. And that's only part of my strategy. Yet again, you shouldn't do things for a 1.5 month time frame. Even with this so-called Hail Mary, as I'm putting it, I still don't see me outperforming. Even with ELF, say ELF shoots up back to $200 by the end of the year, which I don't know why it would. Well, it's 6.7% of my portfolio. So that's 6% of the portfolio up. I still need, oh, I'm sorry. So that's up 200. So if ELF goes from, let's just say 100 to 200 and I actually bought it at 100, it would be up 100%. Okay, well, it's only 6% of my portfolio, let's just say, rough numbers. So that would mean that it would contribute not much. It would contribute 3% to my overall portfolio. So yet again, not much saving me. The whole Schedule 3 thing, if that went the other direction, that might have helped me. What I'm saying is pretty much out of catalysts for the year. Drone Rogue hasn't reported yet. Even if it does, yet again, it's 20% of my portfolio, but the heavy lifting it would have to do would be incredible. Even the end of year rally that it would need to engage in would be incredible. And I believe they're not selling product in New Jersey until December. Okay, so that's going to be in the Q4 number. So that's call it February or March of next year. So that's not going to help me. So what I'm saying is that this is how I'm thinking about things. I just don't see what any of the catalysts are to get me to catch up to the S&P, and I don't see a way in which the S&P falls radically and yet somehow my portfolio maintains the gains it's had. So neither do I see me, closing the gap while the S&P pulls back, nor do I see me launching past the S&P, nor do I see the S&P crashing and yet somehow my portfolio crashing less to the extent of then outperforming as a consequence of the S&P crashing so hard and me crashing less hard. So, not positive news. So, with that said, I think I'll end it there. Thank you for watching, and until next time.